Deadpool and Wolverine was the shot in the arm the MCU needed after a series of weak entries, and although the third installment in the Deadpool franchise nailed a lot of things, there was one element of this film that was clearly underwhelming: the plot. Now, before I start this review, I want to make it clear that I actually enjoyed this movie, a whole lot more than most of Marvel's recent catalog, and I honestly think that it's a perfectly fine movie. However, I do believe that the plot is single-handedly what holds this film back from being a great movie, and today I wanted to explain why that is the case. As always, I will be breaking my analysis down into a few categories: core motivations and style over substance. If you end up enjoying this review, then I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. We're so close to 10,000 subs, so please help me reach that goal by subscribing right now. Oh, also, spoiler warning is in effect for this video, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, you have been warned. Okay, let's get right into the analysis. One of the most important aspects of a good narrative are the motivations that drive it, but unfortunately, most of the motivations in Deadpool and Wolverine are not exactly the strongest, and that is mainly due to their lack of development on screen. So, what do I mean by that? Well, allow me to provide you with some examples. For instance, Wade Wilson's motivation in this movie is that he finally wants to matter, to do something of significance or importance, and the underlying reason for why he wants to do this is because the woman he loves, Vanessa, wants him to use his abilities for a greater good. On the surface, this seems like a perfectly fine motivation. He wants to essentially become a hero, but once we start to examine it closer, several cracks start to appear. As established earlier, Wade's desire to be a part of something more is actually driven by his love interest, Vanessa, but her reason for wanting Wade to become a hero doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. She's been with Wade for over 2 movies now, and in that whole time, the fact that he wasn't using his powers for heroism didn't really seem to bother her at all. What happened to cause her to have such a drastic change of heart? Now, I'm not saying that Vanessa as a character can't change, but what I am saying is that if her character is going to change this significantly, then you have to give the audience a reason for why that drastic change happened. Maybe she saw someone who was close to her get harmed or killed by some kind of evil, and that motivates her to demand that Wade use his powers for a greater purpose. Okay, that's fine. But if you don't show the reason for why Vanessa has this change of heart, then it feels like a random plot device that just comes out of nowhere and just serves as a catalyst to get the story started. What about Logan's motivation? In Deadpool and Wolverine, Logan is motivated by his desire to fix the world that he screwed up through his failure to protect his friends and then his vengeful retaliation that turned the whole world against the mutants. Again, similar to Wade's motivation, this driving force actually seems perfectly fine on the surface. However, once we take a closer look, the flaws start to reveal themselves. Wait a second, Ghost Toast. Logan's motivation was super strong, and his guilt is a great motivator for his actions and character arc. Well, yes, to a certain extent you are right. But once again, it is due to the lack of development of this motivation material that makes the motivation itself come across as nothing more than a sad story. Throughout the entire movie, characters have been hinting at how this Wolverine is the worst one, hinting at something dark in his past, and all of those mysteries finally get answered right before the third act, when Logan tells Laura his story. But if you've been around the channel long enough, then you should already know what I'm about to say here. Perhaps my favorite film principle to reference in my videos: show, don't tell. Hearing Logan recount how he wasn't there to protect his friends because he was getting drunk at the bar has nowhere near the same impact and weight as the visual image of Logan standing in front of the ruins of the school for gifted youngsters and seeing a multitude of corpses strewn across the floor. The visual of seeing a game-winning shot is much more powerful than just simply hearing about a game-winning shot, and in the same way, the visual of Logan's failure to save his friends is much more powerful than simply just hearing about that visual, despite Hugh Jackman's great performance. And this problem with weak motivations isn't just an issue for Logan and Wade, but others like Paradox also have similar defects with their motivations as well. Why does Paradox want to rise the ranks of the TVA by doing things such as instantly destroying universes that the TVA disapproves of? He plans on being promoted and taking over the TVA by showing them how effective his results of simply ripping expiring universes apart can be. But if the TVA seriously disapproves of said ripping up of universes, so much so that Paradox has to conduct his work in secret, then how would he expect to be rewarded by showing them the results of his work and thereby exposing his own illegal operation? That seems like a surefire way of getting arrested and fired, not promoted. In summary, most of the motivations in Deadpool and Wolverine feel weak because they were not properly developed on screen or because they simply lacked logical sense. Another issue that I saw with the story of Deadpool and Wolverine was that the actual story itself seems to be a secondary concern when compared with other elements of the film, such as the big cameos and grand fight scenes. What I mean is that the whole story seems to be just a loose, weak connected sequence of events that gets the characters from one big scene to the next. For example, the TVA and their sudden introduction feels more like a plot device that was invented out of nowhere just to explain how Hugh Jackman could come back as Wolverine and how the film could cram all of these fan-favorite cameos into its runtime. How does the TVA work? What are their powers and capabilities? How does their introduction change things going forward? Pretty much none of these valid questions are answered because the movie isn't actually concerned with fleshing out the TVA, but instead it is concerned with barfing out the bare minimum information just in order to explain how it will be possible for Deadpool to travel to different realities. The TVA, which is the main catalyst and driver for the story, doesn't feel natural or feel like it has been well established or like a clever, nuanced addition to the story world, but rather it comes across as simply a means in order to get all of these super cool epic moments where old and new characters from different universes come together. Or take for instance the sudden introduction of anchor beings, which is just immediately glossed over and accepted as fact despite not really making a whole lot of sense. Like, why does an entire reality depend upon random heroes in order to survive? How does that even work? However, the movie doesn't care to dig more into this potentially mysterious and reality-altering element, and instead reduces the whole existence of this insanely important information to a contrived explanation for why Wade's universe is dying. And yet another example are Paradox's illogical and whack motivations, which are quickly brushed aside because the movie is, again, not worried about actually fleshing out a reasonable and memorable villain, but instead wants to simply use Paradox as a plot device in order to introduce the Time Ripper and give Deadpool a reason to have to travel the multiverse in search of Logan. In other words, for the most part, the story itself seems to be driven by the desire to reach all of these big moments rather than being driven by genuine, meaningful character growth, which is why the story can feel empty and shallow at times. When the main focus of a narrative is just to logically explain how a story can progress from one huge scene to the next, then the story is not very concerned with cleverly developing a compelling and coherent narrative by stitching together scenes that build upon each other in an exciting and intentional way. That's why so many elements of this film's plot feel underbaked or weak. It's because a lot of those elements need to be contrived and illogical pieces that can help explain how the film can reach major, hype scenes. It's ultimately because Deadpool and Wolverine is more concerned with its style over its substance. Overall, Deadpool and Wolverine was not a bad movie at all, and I just wanted to reiterate that. I think that this film was leaps and bounds better than a lot of Phase 4, but I did feel like the weak story was really what kept it from becoming one of Marvel's greatest movies. If you enjoyed this review, then you would probably really like my other videos, so be sure to check out some of my review playlists on my channel, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe as it really helps me out. We're so close to hitting that 10,000 sub mark. Please subscribe and help me reach 10,000 subs. Anyways, I've been Ghost Host. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a great day.